And we're live. Welcome again. We're here with Nicolas Averseng. He is the founder and CEO of UE. UE?
Yeah, you.
Okay. Uh, Sounds like a sound you say when you're in a joyous state. And He is a serial entrepreneur. He's been working within the space of data and AI for some time now. Um, Many organizations and consultancies that work on data products rely on UE for their data product management efforts for themselves and their clients. So it's a great pleasure to have you here and share with us a little bit on your knowledge and experience building this platform and this methodology.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and hello everyone. Hopefully you enjoy the event so far, and hope it will be a valuable, let's say, experience and practices for you to use in your day to day afterwards. Shall we start?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna get out of here and let you.
Oh, okay, no problem. You can stay, but So what I wanted to share with you today is really about what is the challenge with deploying data and AI product at scale, and how you ensure that when you build them, you focus on delivering value in a responsible way across the organization, and that's something we call the StratOps approach. So looking forward to your question at the end, and let me walk through it. So most of you are probably already building data and AI products in a way, and facing different challenges with that. So the typical challenge we see with building data and AI products are around how do you actually select the right one? It can seem obvious, but how do you make sure that you identify the right demands, the right areas, how do you prioritize them, etc., etc. And then the second topic, which is critical, is that when we talk about products, it's about who's going to use that? What are the users? How are we going to bring value to them? And so how do we make sure that the product we built are going to be useful for them, usable so that it's embedded in their processes, and then ultimately that people actually use them. To get there, you need to make sure you have a good way to capture all those different requirements. And the thing here is that it's not only one time. So that's also one of the main difference of building products versus doing like a project-oriented approach, is that it's an ongoing process, because you need to capture initial requirements, but also then ongoing, so that you know when you need to evolve or maintain, etc., those different products. And ultimately, you're going to need to come back to how do you track the value contribution there, how do you make sure that it's still in line with what your users expect, and again, how you're going to use that to evolve the product over time. You can't forget about the associated risks. So how do you assess them? How do you govern them? How do you report on regulatory requirements for that? And ultimately making sure that you have the right team topologies, because like especially if you talk about data mesh or building a lot of data products, the question is who owns what, who builds what, who consumes what, and so on. So that's what we call the team topologies and so on. So building data products teams, it's not just a technical approach, it's something that requires a deep mindset change, and so it has a lot of different angles, and it's not easy. And actually, when you look at what's happening now in on the industry, it's not going so well. So we have some metrics here, and it's horrendous, like the lady is screaming here. The first thing, and that's what Gartner has been reporting late last year, is that basically between 75 and 80% of all data and AI investments are unused, or are going to be unused. And so that's a big waste, because if 75% of everything you build is actually unused, it's pretty bad. And the consequence of that, in a way, or another aspect, is that because it's not so successful, we observe that the average tenure of the chief data and AI officer is actually very low. So that's a way to say you can't really drive the transformation if there is such a high-paced change on the leadership and how you can drive the change. And ultimately, the last part is that, as we've seen this before, most of the factors to deliver value are not linked to technology anymore. So it's not about the technology not being accessible. It's more about how do you set up as an organization to be able to deliver on this technology than anything else. So why is that so hard? And usually it's really hard because most organizations are tackling things from a bottom-up approach. So basically trying to build governance from a bottom-up approach. So basically saying, like, here, if you're trying to set up governance as a very control-oriented function or only compliance focused, then it's really hard to get the business leaders on board. And because you're trying to focus on value and they're trying to focus on the value, and then you'll have that kind of disconnect. So you need to be able to connect that kind of what the business wants with what you need to control or to deliver. And the second thing is like trying to build cool stuff and saying, let's build product because it looks popular and because it's a new, let's say, shiny word on the markets. But if you don't really adopt those product management mindset, saying if there is no market, if there's no clear business need to reuse, to use them in different processes, then it's going to create waste. So there's a urgency to shift the thinking and to start from not about this bottom-up approach, but from a top-down basically approach where you focus on how do you better define, deploy, and then scale that transformation strategy to optimize for value creation, and obviously in a responsible way. So there is, on one hand, the value, what you want to achieve, how you're going to serve the business, and also how you're going to do that in a responsible way. So when we talk about that, it raises that question of what do we call a good data and AI strategy to be able to capture that. So we have 6 different pillars we have identified, which are very interconnected together. So the first thing, which is very important, is that you need to have a consolidated approach. So it's not only, I've seen many organizations having only a data strategy and then trying to build an AI strategy. And all of that is both disconnected from the business strategy, but kind of looked at in isolation. And we strongly believe, and we've seen a huge difference when you look at it as one consolidated strategy where you can connect what you want, what you need to do with data, and what you need to prioritize on data, and then on analytics, and then on AI together, because it's tightly interconnected, so that you can try that. So look at it in a consolidated way and not in different silos. The second topic is it has to be aligned, as I mentioned, with what are the objectives as an organization? What are your business objectives? What is the value you want to deliver, but also the ethical stance you want to adopt? And that's really important, because how you want to have AI, for example, impact your employees, your clients, etc., is really important. The third part is that you need to have in mind something that is iterative, so that you can deliver value fairly in a fairly short term, and also work toward a longer term goal. So you need to balance those 2 dimensions together. But in one case, if you only look after quick wins, you won't really achieve any transformation. But if you only focus on long-term goals and enablers, you will miss the gap of working with the business and driving that transformation. So when you deliver that foundation, it may be too late, and then again we go back to another cycle. And then importantly, whatever you build needs to be adopted. And so thinking about how in the strategy you're going to make sure that it's going to be operationalized. So connecting those goals with how you're going to build those products, how you're going to deliver them, how you're going to monitor them, how you're going to work with the business on what they need to do, adoption, etc., etc. So that operationalization part is something we're going to talk about just after. Of course, it has to be product-based, because it's not about building one-time things. Everything you build is new capabilities or leveraging existing capabilities into new business generation or value generation. And so that product, again, what product-based means is being user-centric and having a lifetime, and caring about things over time until end of life. So from identifying a new need to deciding that it's not accurate anymore, you need to discard the product. And that requires some organizational capabilities to do that. And last, any strategy is built to evolve, because whatever you decide today is going to be different in 6 months, 1 year from now, because of external factors, because of technology, because of maybe acquisition, maybe of economics, etc. So sometimes people believe that they can build a 3-year strategy and it's not going to change. And actually, you need to make sure that you will be able to embed change in how you build the strategy, so that also the tools you use to continuously rank, gauge priorities and ongoing work are there to be able to adapt. So it's about what you build at the strategic level and how you manage the operational side to be able to evolve efficiently. So once we've seen that, again, back to how do you actually define, deploy, and scale that? And so to do that, you really need to do that connection between how you define the strategy, how you link that with your operating model. Again, building that connection literally between the technical side of things and the business side of things, which is usually missing. And basically, that's what we call the StratOps approach. So connecting that strategic and operating layer together, very much like when we did DevOps or DataOps, etc., which is always about reconciling this kind of what do we build and how do we operate that with a more frequent feedback loops, adjustments, and so on. So that StratOps approach has all those characteristics of being executable with small increments, being value-driven and measurable so that you can observe what's happening and adjust the strategy. And based on the strategy, you adopt the operating model, etc., and having that dynamic feedback loops all the time. So to zoom a bit more, what we put behind that. So when we talk about strategy, and I'm going to dive a bit in there, you have the things of how do we assess outcomes, how do we identify risk and guidelines, and then how do we orchestrate all of that with a portfolio management approach, and ultimately, how do we measure to make sure that we can inform and adapt over time. And that strategic layer connects with more operational practices that we won't dive into today, like how do we identify impact, so what we need to build on, how do we ensure we have good agile delivery and XOps practices. So XOps are those DevOps, DataOps, AIOps, FinOps, etc. How do we set up the right team topologies to deliver? Again, who's in charge of what are the handoffs, etc. And ultimately, kind of the day-to-day product governance, which is how do you have gates for deployment? How do you have gates for quality monitoring, etc., etc. Again, very linked with the portfolio. And of course, around all of that, you need to make sure that you embed that in the larger change management discipline in the organization. So let's zoom into some of those topics to see what it really takes to how do we define those guidelines to help framing the strategy and connecting that with the operating model. So the first thing is working outcome assessment. So outcome assessment is how do we define the success criteria or the impact that we expect from our data and AI products. There are different methodologies to do that. We won't dive into too much details, but the idea here is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. There are different approaches. You can select the one that fits your organization the better. And the main criteria here is to start with how the organization is already thinking about value. You probably have an existing OKR framework or strategic framework. And if you start from there, you will be able to articulate things in a way that talks to the business. So I've highlighted here different approaches taken from books or analysts. And basically on the left side, you have things that what we call value tree, where you start from high-level vision, how do you define business goals, what are the bets you take, and then what are the initiatives you're going to invest on to support those bets. You have the Gartner framework, called enterprise value equation, where they start more from who are the stakeholders, what are their business priorities, what are the outcomes we're looking to achieve those priorities, and then what are the value enablers, so those use cases or initiatives you identify to help achieving those outcomes. So this is where you plug your products. And on the right hand side, you have what is more called the decision trees, which are kind of the decision intelligence world. And here you start from what are the business initiatives or business processes, who are the stakeholders and decision makers in there, what decision do they take to enable and to support those processes, and then what are the use case we can identify to help making better decisions. So as you see, different approach, different flavors, same goals. So then you can pick and choose and adapt what you want. But that's really critical to start from that. How do you define value and how you're going to track that? Second topic, you have value, but you also need to think about risk at the same time. Similarly, one thing that bothers me the most is that I see many organizations thinking about value and thinking about risk in two different silos, and I don't understand that it's possible because it's tightly interconnected. So you can't think about value without assessing the underlying risk, and vice versa, because this is how you adjust what you're going to do. So here, similarly, you need to have a good framework for risk. You need to be able to efficiently assess that. For example, in different categories like privacy-related risk, cybersecurity, environmental risk, etc., etc. And then you need to define and deploy guidelines and assessment guidelines, and then controls associated to those guidelines, and apply them at different levels. So how do those risks apply to my data? How do those risks apply to my AI systems? How do those risks apply to my application and platform architecture? And then you combine all of that to make sure that you have a good way to assess whether it's feasible and how that compliant with what you want to do. Similarly here, I'm going to go quickly, but there's plenty of different frameworks. Many of them we have as templates in our platform, but also we know that we need to take those frameworks and tailor them to you. So like a blend of what you already have, what you miss, and make sure that you complete those existing assessment framework and make them effective for your organization so that people actually use them. So now that we have value and risk assessment, we need to operationalize that with a portfolio management approach. So that's the core of what we do with our clients and partners, really starting to build that consolidated portfolio where we make that connection between those products and assets, the one you have, the one you want to build, with what are the initiatives and use case, so basically business demands, and that you have identified to drive those and use those products or to evolve those products, and then how is that connected to strategic business priorities and business KPIs and so on. So really building that, what we call that value lineage, is a core to be able to have that inventory of what are your different products, what is the different stage, how do you prioritize them, how you're going to, how do you know the value you want to expect from that, and how you're going to measure success, basically. And around that, to help assessing this, we plug the different value management frameworks, so what we've seen before, assessing value, risk, and cost. We didn't go through that, but that's the third part. And of course, animating the different workflows, which are all the different collaboration workflows, decision points, gates, committees, compliance reports, etc., that you need to animate your program and to collaborate across the organization. So, and again, having the portfolio is really important because this is where you see all the things and track the life cycle end to end. So now that we have that, the last question is usually around, but how do we measure value? Because we had the outcome assessment, and we have the risk, and obviously we start to operate the program, and how do we make sure we're there? So usually, and that's a question we have often, how do we actually measure value? The first thing to know is to not get confused with where do you measure, because there is plenty of way to measure, and usually it goes into one of those 5 different levels at a high level. We can of course it's a template, but so, and depending on who you're communicating to, you might need different ways to measure, or sometimes it's a maturity issue. So for example, working in terms of financial valuation, it's not always interesting, or it's not all organizations are mature for that, but it's something interesting for the CFO or for the executive committee. But then you can do that based on business KPIs and OKRs. So basically, if you have your business KPIs and OKRs, then you can transform that into financial valuation. And then you can move into more operational metrics, meaning like at the bottom you have data quality and operating costs, etc. You have more efficiency levels, or how efficient are my data pipelines, how efficient are my learning pipelines, etc., etc. And so when you look at it and you classify like that, it becomes much easier to know what you're communicating, and you can find ways to correlate in a way, or to see how you're going to use that in your value story. So saying basically, yeah, okay, my data quality is improving, but how is that impacting, for example, my business KPI? Is it important? Is it not? Etc. etc. So having that kind of layered approach is a way to simplify communication and to help building this connection between the different measurements you do at different levels. So again, depending on where you are, you don't have to cover all of that, but you need to be clear on what you're measuring, what it means, and what action you can take on top of that. And the second dimension of measurement is that it has to be continuous. So when you start the initiative or the product, you need to make sure that you establish the baseline, and then you have to build those continuous feedback loop during delivery, during production, and across time, and during the change of the product. So again, it's also a discipline that you can set across the organization. But again, step by step, you don't have to cover all of that because it might take time to do all of it. So just to wrap up, I quickly browse through, okay, how do you define the strategy in terms of outcomes, in terms of risk, in terms of animating all of that with a portfolio management approach to support the end-to-end governance, and then how you measure things to inform and adapt. And obviously all of that is informing, as you see very concretely, what is being done on the technical level. And again, you can then connect to more operational tools to make sure that then what is happening on the operational level informs the strategy, and we can have this feedback loop. To briefly finish with what we do at UE, basically we are the cockpit for the data transformation and to manage the life cycle of the strategy and of your different products and the portfolio of the different products. So we kind of cover all the processes around defining, animating the program and building that portfolio, animating the governance, etc., and making the connection with your between your business and then your technical teams, but also between your technical tools to make sure that we facilitate communication and like streamline workflows. We've been named a Gartner Cool Vendor. We've been named also as a key vendor in AI governance. But really, the approach that what we're trying to convey is that to succeed with your transformation, you need to have a disciplined approach about managing data and AI and about driving all your data and AI investments, very much like a financial portfolio. So how do I identify demands? How do I prioritize them? How do I build the right products? And how do I maintain and nurture those products over time to deliver the value in a responsible way? To give you a few visuals on the product, it's very simple looking. Here you have an idea of, for example, an overview of the high strategic business priorities, something where the business can start from, and then zoom to understand how do we measure, what are the KPIs we have identified toward the strategic business objective, what are the use cases we have identified below that to deliver, how is my budget going on, and then we can zoom on, for example, different data domains to understand if we take a data domain, how is that supporting different use cases and different strategic business objectives, so that we help the data management team to make better decisions on prioritization or in different investments. And again, around that, we can really browse different views around where's my inventory of use cases, where is my inventory of data and AI product, what is my compliance reporting around that, how do I prioritize my different investments. And finally, one view that people really like is to have that kind of high-level value lineage, which is a way to connect the strategic business priorities on the left with through business metrics, use cases, and ultimately to individual products, so that you connect those business outcomes and requirements with more technical things like data quality on the hand. And you can then communicate both ways. Business users understand what you do with data and AI to support their objectives, and more technical users can understand what is the impact of what they're doing and how they're going to be successful or reduce risk, etc., for the organization. I hope it was clear and interesting for everyone. So Don't hesitate to reach out to with me on LinkedIn. Happy to take any question and to discuss further.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nicholas. Anybody can go and freeze this frame and scan the QR code. But I just want to say, and I want to I want to underscore really that this is all based on science. A lot of people disassociate business and science from each other because they think, oh, business is intuition. My gut tells me to do this. I have some artistic or creative expression, but it's all signals. It's all hypothesis, and you make a guess. You make mistakes. You learn from them. You pivot until you find the right guess, but it's something that you hammer out continuously. And this is something that allows you to build a set of guesses and hammer them out over time, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's and you know what, one thing that is interesting is that what you're mentioning is exactly what you do at the startup level. You know, when you build a company, but when you're working on the data and AI strategy within a company, you might have hundreds of products like that. So the problem is not only how you do that, you know, for one product, but how you do that at
The
scale. So
portfolio. Yeah.
that's why I'm insisting on that portfolio approach, because you need a systematic way to do that for all of your products across all the different life cycle as a new discipline, a new muscle you need to build within the organization. So that's and that's a I mean, and again, going there step by step, it's not so hard, but you need to
It
have
gets
the right
complex very
tooling.
quickly, right?
Exactly.
Also, everybody kind of doesn't. Everybody has a fuzzy description for strategy and for operations. But if you look at a corporate, which means a body of people or a grouping of people, strategy is supposed to be the head, and execution or operations is the body.
Yeah.
If you're looking this way and you're walking this way, you're going to be misaligned and you're going to bump into walls. So it makes sense to have full visibility and alignment between your strategy and operations with something that you can interrogate, like this platform. You want to make sure that whatever it is that they're guessing at the top and whatever is being discovered at the bottom coincides and aligns, right?
Yeah, and a lot of time it doesn't, you know, and that's again, people build things that are not aligned with anything the strategy wants, or sometimes you build a very nice strategy, but no one really thought about what does it take to actually operationalize that and execute on that, and then obviously it becomes a hurdle. So again, having that kind of very connecting them together in and making that also, you know, iterative and you know, learning experience is critical. um, Especially, you know, I have always a story saying I know a company who spent almost 18 months building a new data and AI strategy in 2920, and then it was presented to the group like 1 week before lockdowns in Europe. So for COVID lockdowns, and obviously after at the end of 2020 when they started again, every single line of that strategy went to scrap to start a new one. And the thing there is that, okay, things change, but if you have to scrap all of it that you spend 18 months, you have something fundamentally wrong in how you approach strategy and how you adapt to change, because change is like every day now.
There's a conversation I had with Kurt Cagle for a podcast, and we were talking about systems, and we
Hmm.
were talking about the idea that a few simple rules, when you combine simple rules together, they build complex systems organically, right? Because little rules multiply with each other factorial wise. You have infinite combinations of those configurations. But the simplest thing that I have in the back of my head whenever I talk to people like you that are engaging with executive level and people managing entire resources of an organization, is it's very simple to look at the incentives of a business, even a nonprofit, because at the end of the day, even if a nonprofit is a social impact, they still manage resources to survive. So,
And they still have goals. I mean, and sometimes it's even easier because they should be able to articulate those goals. But yeah, I mean, everyone has business goals. Even um, government. If you look at it, because I had many discussions with government agencies or ministries, etc., and they have goals. It might be social goals, it might be economical goals, and so on. So I really believe it's for all organizations, not only capitalist business, I would say.
But the three little takeaways were all businesses or all organizations want to make money or more revenue or have a higher impact.
Mm.
All organizations want to reduce their expenses so that they're more efficient, and all organizations want to satisfy more customers. Because if you increase any of these levers, the organization is more impactful, more influential, fighter, more profitable, whatever adjective you want to put there.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a great one, and hopefully everyone wants to be more efficient. that's that's a good one.
What have been the major? And I'll ask this as a final note. What have been the major challenges that you've seen as people have invited you over or working with the consultancies that rely on your product? What have been the major challenges that they encounter when they enter into an organization?
Um, I think by far the main challenge is that tendency to focus on technical things first, and not, I mean, that shift from thinking business first and not technology first is the main one, because there is always that kind of a geeky approach, or tech-driven approach, saying, yeah, we're going to build a new data platform, or we're going to deploy a new tool, and then it's going to happen, and somehow, and then we build it and they will come. And honestly, 99% of the time it doesn't work. And it's the same with building data lakes, building data governance, building data catalogs, and so on, because when it's built as a capability in itself, and that's the main challenge, both main cause of failure, but also the main challenge to shift the mindset, is to make people understand that yes, we need to invest on those enablers, but in a value driven way, so in a way where we can deliver value incrementally, and so on. And the hard part, in a way, to change that small but, key mindset.
It's all small, right? Until
It's
it adds up and snowballs, and people are spending 18 months and strategy.
exactly. It looks like a detail, but that's really a whole world that is being different afterwards. If you, again, don't look, and it's true, beyond data and AI. Sometimes when you talk about processes, sometimes, there is a famous saying that people start to confuse processes as being the goal and not the mean to achieve a
Right,
goal.
right.
And so it's the same with tools for data and AI. People look at those, like saying, yeah, we have I don't know, Snowflake now is going to be whole different because we solve all the problems. But it's just
Tool.
it's a great tool, but it's a tool. So if you don't know how, if you use a hammer to open a cork, it's not really great.
I'm gonna try that one out.
Sure, that's time for a drink now. Yeah, it's a good time for in France to open a bottle. So, but I will use a cork opener. I'll do it the civilized way.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to learn from you, and learn a little bit about the challenges that you've seen. And for me, it's self-evident, but it's not always self-evident why your product and your services are deeply required. As you painted out in that anecdote, uh, some people just they don't know how to measure the impact of their decisions, or they're stuck in an analysis paralysis because they don't know how to proceed. But if you have a
Exactly.
way to outline your hypothesis, make a bet, see if it worked or not, and get feedback, at least you have a chance to course correct as you navigate um, that action, that hypothesis.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's and that's an easy one, but a big mindset shift, in a way. To not just do the cool idea to the end and at the end say, oh, no one uses it. Too bad.
Well, I hope everybody got some value out of this, and Manas also said, "Thank you, Nicholas." So
Thank you, Manaz. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully, it was valuable. Thanks a lot, Joaquin, for the invite and the discussion. And looking forward more question interaction on LinkedIn soon.
Yeah, reach out to Nicolas.
Yeah.